June 20th, 1947. Beverly Hills, California. 10:45 p.m. The house on Linden Drive is quiet. Too quiet for a man like this. Benjamin Siegel sits in the living room of his girlfriend's rented home. A copy of the Los Angeles Times rests in his lap. The headline doesn't concern him. Nothing concerns him tonight. He should be in Las Vegas. He should be managing the catastrophe that the Flamingo Hotel has become, hemorrhaging money, mocked by the press, despised by the men who funded it. But he isn't there. He's here, relaxed, almost comfortable. At 10:47 p.m., a .30 caliber military carbine fires 9 rounds through the front window. 4 bullets find Benjamin Siegel. 1 destroys his right eye. It is found 15 feet from his body. He is dead before his cigarette hits the floor. Hollywood would later tell you this was about the Flamingo's losses, about a gangster who gambled with mob money and lost, a cautionary tale wrapped in neon and desert sand. That version is clean, convenient, almost mythological. The truth is more dangerous because it reveals how the American underworld actually makes its decisions. Not in rage, not in passion, in silence, in boardrooms that don't exist on any map, by men who were never charged, never photographed, never named in any indictment. Bugsy Siegel wasn't killed because he failed. He was killed because he knew too much, and because someone far more powerful needed him gone before he could talk. Williamsburg, Brooklyn. 1906. Benjamin Siegelbaum is born into poverty so ordinary it leaves no mark on history, no grand origin story, no prophecy. Just another Jewish family pressed into the tenements of the Lower East Side, surviving on proximity and necessity. But Benjamin is different from the beginning, and not in the way mythology prefers. He is not charismatic in the Hollywood sense. He is precise, controlled, capable of extraordinary violence without the trembling that usually precedes it. Psychiatrists would later have a word for this. His contemporaries simply called it useful. By 14, he is running a street racket with a boy named Meyer Lansky, 2 teenagers extorting pushcart vendors on Delancey Street. 1 keeps the books. 1 applies the pressure. That division of labor will define American organized crime for the next 40 years. Siegel is not the brains. He has never pretended to be. What he possesses is rarer inside criminal organizations, the willingness to act without hesitation, and the intelligence to understand when that willingness makes him indispensable. He does not kill recklessly. He kills strategically. That distinction matters enormously in the world he is building toward. By his early 20s, he is no longer a street enforcer. He is a partner, a principal, a man that men far older and far wealthier treat with genuine caution. Poverty did not make Bugsy Siegel dangerous. Clarity did. New York City, late 1920s. Prohibition has done something no reformer anticipated. It has professionalized American crime. The old mustache Petes, Sicilian bosses who govern through ethnic loyalty and old-world tradition, are being replaced, quietly, systematically, by a generation of younger men who think in terms of markets, not territory, profit margins, not honor codes. Siegel and Lansky position themselves at the center of this transition. They are not Italian. In a world still governed by Cosa Nostra hierarchy, that should disqualify them entirely. It doesn't, because they make themselves impossible to exclude. Siegel cultivates relationships with Lucky Luciano, with Frank Costello, with Joe Adonis, not as subordinates, as equals with specialized value. That value has a specific name, Murder Incorporated. Operating out of a candy store in Brownsville, Brooklyn, Murder, Inc. is the enforcement arm of the National Syndicate. The governing body Luciano constructs after the Castellamarese War reshapes New York's power structure in 1931. It is not a gang. It is a contract system. Killings are approved by committee, assigned to specialists, executed with operational precision that law enforcement for years cannot comprehend. Siegel is not merely a participant. He is a founding architect. Estimates place the body count between 400 and 1,000 murders over a decade. The true number will never be known. More importantly, neither will most of the names who authorize them. That anonymity is the system working exactly as designed. Siegel understands this better than almost anyone. Power in the national syndicate belongs not to those who pull triggers, but to those who authorize them, while remaining invisible. He has spent his entire career making himself essential to that invisibility. Soon, he will make the mistake of stepping into the light. Los Angeles, 1945. The war is ending. America is preparing to consume itself with prosperity. Siegel sees it before almost anyone else. He has been in California since the late 1930s, dispatched by the Syndicate to consolidate the racing wire operation on the West Coast, a sophisticated gambling intelligence network that feeds results to bookmakers across the country. He executes this assignment with characteristic efficiency. But California changes him. Not the glamour, as the mythology insists. Not the actresses or the mansions or the proximity to Hollywood royalty. What changes him is scale. The realization that organized crime has been thinking too small. That the future does not belong to backroom card games and urban rackets. It belongs to the desert. Nevada has legalized gambling. Las Vegas is a crossroads town with ambition and nothing else. Siegel envisions something the Syndicate cannot yet imagine. A legitimate luxury resort that launders not just money, but the entire image of organized crime. A place where the architecture signals respectability, where senators and film stars sit beside each other at the same tables, compromising themselves voluntarily. It is, by any measure, a visionary idea. It is also his undoing. The Flamingo Hotel hemorrhages money during construction. Costs spiral from $1 million to $6 million. The Syndicate's investment, drawn from men like Lansky, Luciano, and the Chicago outfit, is evaporating in the Mojave heat. Whispers circulate that Siegel is skimming, that his girlfriend, Virginia Hill, is transferring funds to Swiss accounts. The whispers are partially true. The skimming is real, though its scale is disputed. But here is what the films never examine. The Syndicate has tolerated financial losses before. What it cannot tolerate is a man who has become too visible, too famous, too frequently photographed, too connected to legitimate society in ways that invite scrutiny. Siegel has stopped being an asset operating in shadow. He has become a liability operating in daylight. The Flamingo's losses provide justification. They are not the cause. The cause is far colder than money. Washington, D.C., 1946. The federal government is beginning to ask questions it previously lacked the vocabulary to form. The Second World War has ended. The machinery of American intelligence, the surveillance apparatus, the interagency coordination, the systematic documentation of networks does not dismantle itself. It redirects. And increasingly, it redirects toward organized crime. Senator Estes Kefauver of Tennessee is not yet the household name he will become. That arrives in 1950, when his special committee to investigate crime in interstate commerce televises its hearings to a nation that watches, transfixed, as the architecture of the National Syndicate is exposed in real time. But the investigation's foundations are being laid now, quietly. In 1946, federal agents are mapping the racing wire operation, the Transamerica wire service that Siegel controls on the West Coast. They are documenting its connections, tracing its revenue, following its threads back toward the Syndicate's central nervous system. This is the political context the mythology ignores entirely. Siegel is not simply a gangster who overspent on a hotel. He is the most visible node in a wire network that connects directly to Meyer Lansky's financial infrastructure, the same infrastructure that funds political campaigns, bribes law enforcement, and maintains the Syndicate's legitimate facade across a dozen American cities. His visibility makes him a liability in two directions simultaneously. To federal investigators, He is an entry point, a thread that, if pulled carefully, unravels something vast. To the Syndicate, he is therefore a door that must be permanently closed. Lansky understands this with mathematical clarity. He has always understood that survival inside organized crime requires one discipline above all others: never become the story. Siegel has violated this principle catastrophically. His face appears in newspapers. His associations are documented. His name is spoken in Senate corridors. Meyer Lansky will live to 80. He will never be successfully prosecuted. The contrast is not coincidental. It is the thesis. December 1946. Havana, Cuba. While Bugsy Siegel oversees the disastrous Flamingo opening, the men who own him are meeting without him. This detail matters enormously. The Hotel Nacional, a gathering so significant it would later be called the Havana Conference. Lucky Luciano, recently deported to Italy, has slipped back into the Western Hemisphere. The most powerful figures in American organized crime converge around him: Lansky, Frank Costello, Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, the Chicago outfit's representation. Frank Sinatra is present, though his precise role remains deliberately ambiguous. Siegel is not invited. That absence is not logistical. It is a verdict. The agenda includes narcotics policy, territorial disputes, and the Cuban gambling infrastructure Lansky is quietly constructing. But one item commands the room's genuine attention: the question of Benjamin Siegel and what to do about the Flamingo's mounting catastrophe. The deliberation is not emotional. There is no anger in that room, no personal vendetta, no wounded pride. These men have not survived this long by making decisions through feeling. The calculation is purely structural. Siegel has become operationally dangerous. The federal scrutiny intensifying around him threatens the wire operation, the Nevada investment, and the political relationships the Syndicate has spent decades cultivating. The Flamingo's losses, real as they are, function as convenient justification for a decision already reached on other grounds. There is one remaining question: timing. The Flamingo reopens in March 1947 and, stripped of its chaotic opening night failures, begins generating profit. For a brief moment, some within the Syndicate argue for patience. Let the hotel stabilize. Let the federal attention shift elsewhere. Lansky, by most credible accounts, argues against waiting, not because of the money, because of what Siegel represents, as long as he remains alive. A man who knows the full architecture of the wire network, the Havana financial channels, and the names of every political figure the Syndicate has ever compromised. A man that angry, that cornered, that aware of his own vulnerability, is a man capable of making catastrophic decisions. The vote, if it can be called that, is not close. Siegel's closest friend in the world signs his death warrant and says nothing. June 20th, 1947. London Drive, Beverly Hills, 10:45 p.m. We return to where we began, but now the room looks different. Siegel is not a man enjoying a quiet evening. He is a man in the final stages of isolation, systematically stripped of protection, deliberately left exposed, his security arrangements quietly dismantled by people he still considers allies. Virginia Hill has left for Paris 2 days prior. The timing is not coincidental. She is removed from the blast radius with the precision of someone who has been informed. The shooter has never been definitively identified. That fact alone reveals everything about how this operation was constructed. This is not a crime of passion executed by an aggrieved associate. This is a professional contract, authorized at the highest level of the National Syndicate, carried out by someone with no traceable connection to the victim. The weapon is a .30 caliber military carbine, surplus from a war that ended 2 years earlier. Untraceable. Efficient. The shooter fires from the garden, through the open Venetian blinds, at a distance close enough to ensure certainty, but far enough to allow immediate withdrawal. 9 rounds. 4 connect. The first shot destroys his right eye. Benjamin Siegel, one of the most dangerous men of his generation, does not have time to register what is happening. 40 minutes after the shooting, before police have fully secured the scene, 3 men walk into the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. Mo Sedway, Gus Greenbaum, Morris Rosen, all Syndicate figures, all previously excluded from the Flamingo's management. They announce, quietly and without ceremony, that they are assuming control of the property. 40 minutes. The operation has been coordinated with a precision that eliminates any possibility of coincidence. The Flamingo transition was prepared in advance. Contracts, management structures, financial arrangements, all of it ready before Siegel's body had cooled. This is the detail that dismantles every Hollywood version of this story. His murder was not reactive. It was not the culmination of building rage or a final loss of patience over construction costs. It was a planned corporate transition, executed under the cover of a gangland killing, designed to transfer a valuable asset from one set of hands to another with minimum disruption. Bugsy Siegel was not punished. He was acquired. The distinction is the entire story. Las Vegas. Summer 1947. The desert does not mourn. Within 72 hours of Siegel's death, the Flamingo is operating under new management with the smoothness of a legitimate corporate succession. No disruption to staff. No interruption to revenue. No visible grief among the men now occupying the offices Siegel built. The Las Vegas Strip, a concept that exists almost entirely because of Siegel's vision, will generate billions of dollars over the following decades. The men who ordered his death will collect the majority of it. Meyer Lansky's financial empire expands dramatically through the late 1940s and 1950s. The Cuban casino infrastructure he presents to the Havana Conference becomes the Syndicate's most lucrative international operation, until Fidel Castro dismantles it in 1959. Lansky dies in Miami in 1983, aged 80, having never served a significant prison sentence. His personal fortune, by FBI estimates, exceeds $300 million. Lucky Luciano, the architect of the National Syndicate, lives out his remaining years in Naples. He never returns to American soil. He never faces American justice for the decisions made in Havana. The Kefauver Committee hearings arrive in 1950, 3 years after Siegel's death. They expose the Syndicate's national infrastructure with devastating clarity. Costello, Adonis, and others are called to testify before a television audience of millions. But the wire network that made Siegel dangerous as a witness, the precise network his visibility threatened to expose, has by then been quietly restructured. The threads federal investigators might have followed through Siegel lead nowhere. The door Lansky feared has been permanently sealed. Virginia Hill testifies before the Kefauver Committee in 1951. She is combative, evasive, and strategically uninformative. She knows precisely what she knows. She understands precisely what disclosing it would mean. She dies in Austria in 1966. An apparent suicide. She is 49 years old. The Los Angeles Police Department officially closes the Siegel murder investigation in 1948. No arrests, no charges, no named suspects. It remains unsolved. That resolution, or rather that deliberate absence of resolution, is itself a demonstration of power. The Syndicate's political relationships extend deep enough into California law enforcement that an investigation into one of the most prominent murders of the decade produces nothing. Not incompetence. Not insufficient evidence. Sufficiency was never the point. The point was silence. And silence, in this case, was purchased, maintained, and delivered with the same professional precision as everything else. Siegel's vision, meanwhile, outlives everyone involved in his death. The Las Vegas he imagined, glamorous, legitimate on its surface, corrupt at its foundation, becomes the defining entertainment capital of the 20th century. His name adorns no building on the strip he created, no monument, no acknowledgement. The city consumed his vision entirely and erased him from it completely. Las Vegas. Present day, The neon still burns. It burns over casinos worth billions, over hotels that dwarf anything Siegel imagined, over a city that receives 40 million visitors annually and asks none of them to consider its origins too carefully. This is precisely how the men who built it intended. Siegel's story is not, at its foundation, a story about greed, or ambition, or the romantic self-destruction of a man who dreamed too large for the world he inhabited. Those narratives exist because they are comfortable, because they place the moral weight on the individual and absolve the system entirely. The system is the story. What Siegel's death reveals is the foundational operating principle of organized crime at its most sophisticated level, that the organization is always more valuable than the individual, that vision without institutional protection is simply exposure, and that the men who build structures of power are almost never permitted to inhabit them permanently. He was useful. Then he was visible. Then he was gone. That progression is not unique to Benjamin Siegel. It is the biography of every man who has ever confused indispensability with safety inside a criminal enterprise. The Syndicate did not hate Siegel. Hatred is inefficient. It simply recalculated his value and acted accordingly. Meyer Lansky understood something his oldest friend never fully absorbed, that survival in this world requires the discipline of invisibility above all other qualities. Brilliance is negotiable. Loyalty is conditional. Invisibility is the only currency that compounds without risk. Siegel spent his entire career making himself impossible to ignore. In the end, that was the only thing about him that mattered. There is a particular cruelty in the way history has treated his memory, not through condemnation, but through romanticization. The films give him charm and tragedy, and Warren Body's face. They return his eye to its socket. They make his death feel earned in a narrative sense, the consequence of passion, of excess, of living too brightly. They do not show the 40 minutes. They do not show 3 quiet men walking into a hotel lobby while their friend's blood is still cooling on a carpet in Beverly Hills, assuming control of everything he built with the calm efficiency of men who have been waiting for precisely this moment. That image, unheroic, transactional, utterly devoid of drama, is the true face of organized crime. Not the gunfire, not the glamour, the 40 minutes. On the night of June 20th, 1947, a man sat in a borrowed living room reading a newspaper, believing himself among allies, unaware that the world he had spent a lifetime constructing had already moved on without him. The desert absorbed him, and kept building.